So good day everyone. Today we will discuss the introduction, key topics in the study of discourse analysis. Discourse analysis, a field that examines how people use language in real-life situations to create meaning, interact, and express their identities. It goes beyond the traditional study of sounds, words, and grammar to focus on how language functions in social contexts, forming text, written or spoken, and interactions. The text highlights four key ideas about language. First, language is ambiguous. Words and sentences rarely have a single, fixed meaning. Understanding requires interpretation based on context and intention. Examples is, do you have a pen? Might mean a request or simply asking about possession depending on the situation. Second, language is always in the world. The meaning of language changes based on factors like time, place, speaker, and purpose. Example is a teacher asking, do you have a pen? During an exam likely means checking preparedness, not requesting a pen. Third, language reflects identity. The way we use language shows who we are and the social groups we belong to. Different situations may prompt us to adjust our language to fit our role or identity in that moment. Example is, the way you speak with friends differs from how you address a professor or client. Last is, language is never used by itself. It doesn't work alone. It combines with other elements like tone, body language, and visuals to create meaning. Example, saying, I'm fine can mean different things depending on tone of voice, facial expression, or accompanying gestures. Discourse analysis help us understand not just the word people use but how they use language to interact and communicate effectively in various social contexts. Language is inherently ambiguous, meaning it often conveys more than the literal meaning of the words used. People don't always express exactly what they mean, and their true intentions are often implied rather than stated directly. For instance, when someone asks, do you have a pen? They may not just be asking about possessions. They are likely requesting to borrow a pen. To understand this, the listener must interpret the speaker's underlying intention, a process that may happen automatically without conscious thought. The ambiguity of language stems from two main factors. First, language imperfection. Words cannot always capture the complexity of human thoughts and emotions. For example, feelings like love or frustrations can be hard to express precisely. Second, multi-layered communication. People often send multiple messages at once. For example, when asking to borrow a pen, the speaker might also be trying to show politeness or avoid imposing too much on the listener. Because of this, understanding language goes beyond the words themselves. It involves interpreting the nuances and indirect meaning in communication. Language is shaped by its social context, meaning that what a statement or question means depends on factors like who is speaking, to whom, and in what situation. For instance, the question, do you have a pen, could mean different things. If a teacher asks this before an exam, it likely means, do you have the tool you need for the test? If a friend asks casually, it may mean, can I borrow a pen? The text emphasizes that language is always situated, meaning its meaning is influenced by specific context. This includes, first, the material world, where the language is encountered, such as on a shop sign, in a textbook, or online, which provides clues about its purpose. Example, a sign saying no smoking in a park is a rule for behavior in that location. Second, relationships. The relationships between the speaker and listener, including their familiarity and social rules. Example, a boss giving instructions carries authority, while the same words from a colleague might feel more like a suggestion. Third, history. Past interactions and expectations about what happened next. Example, if someone frequently borrows pens from you, you may interpret "do you have a pen?" as another request, even if it's not explicitly stated. Last is the other language, how the word connect to previous conversations, text or cultural references. Example, a comment like "it's raining cats and dogs" makes sense if you've learned it as an idiom for heavy rain. The key takeaways is that language doesn't exist in isolations. It always part of a language web of relationships, histories, and context that shapes its meaning. Language is closely tied to social identity, who we are and how we relate to others. When people speak or write, they use language not just to communicate but also to express their identity and define their relationship with others. For example, a person might speak formally at work to reflect their professional role. The same person might use casual, playful language with friends, showing a different side of their identity. The text emphasizes that identities are not fixed or permanent. Instead, they are multiple and fluid, meaning people adopt their language depending on the situation. This doesn't mean their personality changes, but that they adjust their way of speaking in, to fit the context. For instance, at a dance club, someone might use slang and a relaxed tone to fit in socially. At work, they might use technical or formal language to convey professionalism. Language is a tool we use to shape and express who we are, and our way of speaking shift depending on the role or identity we are enacting in a particular moment. Language alone is not enough to fully express an identity. To enact who we are in different contexts, we combine language with other forms of expression, such as clothing, dressing in a way that fits the role, like wearing a glamorous attire as a dance club diva or professional clothing as a professor. Gestures and behavior, using body language or actions that align with the identity, such as calm, deliberate movement for a yoga teacher. Social context, being in the right environment or interacting with the right group of people to reinforce the identity. For example, a professor's identity is not just about using academic language, it also involves dressing professionally, speaking in a formal tone, and teaching in a classroom setting. Historically, discourse analysis focus only on spoken or written language. However, it now recognizes that non-linguistic elements like tone, visuals, gestures, and actions are essential to communications. To fully understand what someone is expressing, we need to look at how language works in combinations with these other modes. In short, identity and meaning are expressed through a mix of language and other forms of communication, not language alone. Discourse analysis helps us better understand how language is used to communicate meaning, reduce misunderstandings, and improve clarity by making the processes of interpreting and expressing language more explicit. It allows us to identify manipulative or unclear communication and express ourselves more effectively in various contexts. This practical knowledge can enhance our daily interaction and help us navigate complex social situations. Beyond the individual communications, discourse analysis reveals how societies functions through language. It shows how power, relationships, and social structure are built and maintained through everyday conversation and text. By studying discourse, we gain insights into broader topics like psychology, politics, and power dynamics, helping us understand different perspectives and how people shape and sustain their realities.
Hello everyone, good morning. My name is Daniluyo III and today we're going to be talking about text and textures. Discourse analysis focus on text and conversations, but what separates them from random collections of words or sentences? In this presentation, we'll explore MAK Holiday's theories about meaning, texture, cohesion, coherence, and intertextuality. We'll mostly focus on written text first and then extend these ideas into conversations. So, for the first slide, we first need to answer the question, what is a text? So, according to Holiday, a text is not just a collection of words, it's a meaningful structure with a specific context. Meaning is created through the choices of a writer or speaker makes. For example, writing milk instead of juice reflects intentional decisions. Without understanding the motivations behind these choices, it can feel random or meaningless. Now that we've answered what a text is, let's first discuss what texture is. Like, what connects a text? So, texture is the structure of a text. Textures makes a text cohesive and coherent. The texture of a text is what distinguishes it from random words, and texture involves internal relationships such as semantic connections, like for example, like I've said earlier, milk and tomatoes, and external frameworks like recognizing the text as a shopping list. These relationships give the text structure and meaning. So basically, texture is the let's just say the context behind the text. No, it is the frameworks, the internal and external frameworks. For example, if we've just written the word milk without giving it much context, it will appear. Let's just say it doesn't have any meaning. It's just a random word, right? But if we recognize that milk is a part of a shopping list, then it will have its meaning or context in that matter. So, let's discuss cohesion. Are internal links in text. Cohesion refers to the linguistic tools that link words or ideas. For instance, in the example dialogue, the word "and" connects items in a list. Similarly, the verb "need" ties the listed items into an action, and pronouns like "we" connect them to people involved in the activity. Cohesion ensures that words, phrases, and sentences are linked together. Words that create connections, like for example, and, because, this, and lexical ties or repetitions of synonyms or related words like milk or dairy or drink. Also reference words like pronouns or determiners. Examples here are he, she, it, and this. Now, I have an example here of a dialogue. Speaker A says, "What do we need from the shop?" And speaker B says, "Milk, tomatoes, and rocket lettuce. Don't forget the light bulbs, they're in aisle 10. You may notice that the sentence is much more cohesive or connected because of the word "and." So, now let's move on to coherence or contextual understanding. Coherence is about making sense of a text by using shared knowledge and conventions. Like for example, a shopping list makes sense because we understand its purpose. Now, without this context, words like rocket, could be interpreted as either a vegetable or a spacecraft, right? So, context transforms these words into a meaningful whole. Coherence relies on three factors, I would say, and that will be shared knowledge or background or cultural understanding, the purpose, what the text is meant to achieve, and three is the logical flow, ideas arranged in a way that makes sense. Now let's move on to intertextuality or connections beyond the text. Intertextuality means that texts connect to other texts to gain meaning. Like for example, a shopping list relates to recipes, and store labels complement the list. Shopping list might stem from a recipe and later connect to store signs in a supermarket. This interconnectedness, known as intertextuality, explains how texts borrow and build meaning from one another. These connections can be direct or explicit references, or indirect like shared ideas, genres, or conventions. Like, for example, like I said earlier, a shopping list connects to recipes, grocery advertisements, and prior conversations. A poem might reference another work and drawing on its themes or language to create deeper meaning. Now, to recap, what makes a text? So there are three pillars of text: cohesion, coherence, and intertextuality. Now, texts are meaningful because of their relationships. And to conclude, what makes a text meaningful is its relationship. Cohesion ties the words and sentences together internally. Coherence ensures the text makes sense within a context, and intertextuality connects the text to others. Together, these features define a text's texture and purpose. That is all for me.
Good day everyone. So I am Ellen Grace Tayaw and I am going to discuss to you the third topic. So the second reporter discussed the text and texture. So now let's proceed to the third topic, which is the text and their social functions. So this section explores how the internal structure and expectations of text contribute to their social functions. Different types of text, such as newspapers, have different patterns of texture and structure. So genre analysis is used to understand the social functions of these texts, such as their conventional structure and emphasis on cohesive devices. Understanding the people who produce and consume these texts is crucial for comprehending their social functions. Genres such as westerns, love stories, horror movies, thrillers, and chick flicks shape our expectations of films. So these expectations include story, characters, cinematography, lighting, special effects, and other filming techniques. However, not all films fit neatly into genres, as some, like scary movie, may be comedy or love stories. Successful films creatively mix different genres to confound our expectations. A genre is a communicative event with specific purposes, often structured and conventionalized. Experts often exploit these constraints to achieve private intentions within the social recognition purposes. Genres are not types of text but types of communicative events with constraints on intent, positioning, form, and functional value. Genres are dynamic systems shaped by both formal constraints and the creative choices of those who use them. Understanding these constraints and how they can be exploited is important for analyzing and interpreting different forms of communication. Second is, genres are communicative events. Genres are communicative events referring to written texts like newspaper articles, recipes, and job application letters as events. So these texts are instances of people doing things with or to others, and their ways are inseparable from the things they aim to accomplish in a specific historical, cultural, and social context. The communicative purposes of text are often multiple and complex, with different people using the text having different purposes. For example, a recipe may persuade to make a dish or buy a product, while a newspaper article might inform or affect opinion. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3 is conventions and constraints. Genres are structured and features are determined by the purpose of the content. For instance, a job application might include information to convince a prospective employer that the applicant is the right fit. Genres have built-in constraints on what can and cannot be included based on the activity. These constraints also dictate how information should be presented, such as presenting the post, qualifications, experiences, and interview requests. The move structure of a genre or the order of actions significantly influences the effectiveness of a communicative purpose, including the post title at the beginning of a job application letter is efficient and helps create a framework for later information. So these conventions demonstrate the writer's knowledge of the job application process, which is crucial for prospective employers to assess an applicant's qualifications and experiences. Fourth is creativity. So job application letters and other texts are not always the same. Successful texts often break rules, defy conventions, and push constraints. Expert producers mix different genres or alter moves or presentation. However, there are limitations to genre alteration and risks associated with creativity. Innovations in various fields require conventions and constraints which can be exploited by playing off or exploiting previously formed expectations. Creativity must be related to the genre and context, such as writing a sonnet for a literary magazine job application. Successful bend and blend genres is a marker of expertise, as mastering the rules is crucial for effective innovation. And last, discourse communities. Genres are used to show belonging and qualifications for specific groups. They are associated with common goals and methods, such as medical charts, contracts, and presentations. These genres help define these groups, exclude non-participants, and regulate relationships between those who belong. Examples include doctors using medical charts, solicitors using contracts, and students using textbooks, handouts, and presentations. John Wallace defines discourse communities as groups with expert members who socialize new members, regular communication, and shared vocabulary. So these communities share common goals and means of reaching them, reinforcing each other. Members use specific genres to move the group closer to shared goals and validate these goals as worthy and legitimate, demonstrating their worth and legitimacy within the group. Section 8 explores how genres regulate and control people's activities, identities, rules, and responsibilities in various contexts. They are built in to daily text, making it difficult to question community goals. Mastery of the genre is required for membership, and the conventions and constraints associated with text create fixed rules and relationships. Genres are not just text types, but important tools for people, groups, and institutions to define, organize, and structure social reality. And last is that the overall is text and their social functions means understanding how written or spoken communication or text plays a role in society. It's about how we use language to connect with others. Texts help us build relationships, share information, and express ourselves. Influence others also. The text can persuade, educate, entertain, or even inspire action. Also, it shapes our world. Text can reflect and influence our values, beliefs, and cultural understanding. So every time you send a text message, write an email, or read a news article, you're engaging with a text that has a social function. So these texts help us navigate our daily lives, connect with others, and make sense of the world around us. And that's all. Thank you.
Let's move on to discourse on ideology. Texts like books, articles, and speeches shape how we understand the world. They express specific viewpoints, meaning the authors share their opinions and perspectives. The words they choose are important because they can influence our feelings about the subject. For example, if an author uses positive language to describe an event, it can make that event seem more enjoyable or significant than it might actually be. Authors also connect with their readers through their writing style, which can make readers feel engaged or persuaded. Writers often borrow ideas from other resources, which helps support their arguments and shows their opinions as part of a larger conversation. Michael Holliday identified three main functions of language that help us understand communication. The ideational function describes how we use language to represent the world, discussing people, actions, and things. For example, when talking about a wedding, we describe the couple and the ceremony, helping others visualize the event. These functions allows us to share experiences and ideas clearly. The interpersonal function focuses on how we build relationships through language. This includes expressing respect or authority based on the situation. For example, using kind words can show support, while a firm tone can convey authority. The textual function helps us organize our ideas logically, making our messages easy to understand. Together, these functions show that language is a powerful tool for shaping our understanding and interactions. Language is important for defining our relationships with others, especially through the interpersonal function. The words we choose can indicate different levels of authority or support. For example, when a priest says, "You may now kiss the bride," it feels like he is giving permission rather than making a command. This choice of words creates a positive atmosphere, suggesting that the priest is supporting the couple instead of controlling them. The style of language, whether formal or informal, also affects how we relate to each other. In a wedding, using formal language adds seriousness and respect to the occasion. This formality enhances the significance of the moment and helps everyone understand its importance. Effective communication fosters connections and respect among participants, influencing their overall experience of the ceremony. Intertextuality is the idea that texts often refer to or depend on the other text to convey meaning. The theorist Mikhail Bakhtin emphasized that all texts are interconnected. We often borrow ideas and phrases from other works when we communicate. This means that quoting someone or paraphrasing their ideas allows us to express our own thoughts while engaging with existing conversations. For example, Elton John's song "Kiss the Bride" uses familiar phrases from traditional wedding ceremonies. By doing this, the song connects with those traditions and adds new meanings to the idea of marriage. This connection shows how ideas can evolve over time and enrich our understanding of cultural practices. Even simple phrases like "you may now kiss the bride" can carry significant meanings and reflect societal beliefs. These phrases often represent expectations about how brides and grooms should behave during a wedding. For example, the phrase implies that the bride is to be kissed, which can reinforce traditional gender roles in marriage. These expectations form that we call cultural models, guiding how people should act in specific situations. Cultural models are influenced by larger discourses, which include the beliefs and values present in society. The phrase about kissing the bride connects to broader ideas about marriage, love, and morality. Philosopher Michael Foucault argued that these discourses can shape how we discuss topics and what is accepted as knowledge. As societal values change, so do these discourses, reflecting shift in views on marriage from duty and tradition to love and companionship.
Good day everyone, my name is Ivy Grace L. Kalungsod. So let's proceed in spoken language. So in this section, we will begin to consider some of the special aspects of spoken discourse. In many ways, speech is not so different from writing. When people speak, they also produce different kinds of genres and use different kinds of social languages. They also promote particular versions of reality or ideologies. But there are some ways in which speech is very different from writing. Speech is more interactive. So when we say speech is more interactive, it is often considered more interactive than written discourse because of its dynamic, real-time nature. Spoken discourse facilitates a type of communication that flexible, immediate, and highly responsive, making it inherently more interactive. So while we do often expect and receive feedback of our writing, especially when it comes to new media genres like blogs, this feedback is usually delayed. So this statement means that although we generally anticipate and receive feedback on our writing, especially in formats like blogs, and feedback doesn't come right away. With blogs and other online platforms, readers may take time to respond after consuming the content. Feedback often arrives later because readers engage at their convenience, and there is usually a delay between a post is published and when others have the opportunity to comment or react. This delay can be due to factors like the time it takes for readers to find the post, reflect on it, and provide feedback. So when we speak, we usually do in real time with other people, and we receive their responses to what we have said right away. So this passage explained that conversations are interactive and occur in real time. When we speak, we respond immediately to what others say and adjust our words based on their actions. Our responses are shaped by both what has already been said and what we expect the other person to say next. We can also change our message mid-conversation if we sense confusion and disagreement of the listener. Listeners in, Listeners in turn can provide immediate feedback such as showing why don't understand or disagree with what's being said. Ultimately, conversations are so created by all participants with each person influencing the direction and meaning of the discussion. So, speech tends to be more transient and spontaneous than writing. So, spoken discourse is more transient and spontaneous than writing because it happens in real time, with speakers producing words on the spot without the chance for careful editing or revision. Unlike writing, which can be planned, edited, and revised before it is shared, spoken language is typically more immediate and less polished, as speakers adjust their words based on the flow of conversation and reaction for listeners. So when we write, we often plan what we are going to write carefully, and we often read over, revise, and edit what we have written before showing it to other people. We typically take time to plan our ideas before starting, organizing our thoughts, and determining what we want to communicate. After writing, we review and revise the content, making changes to improve clarity, grammar, and flow. Editing comes next, where we focus on correcting mistakes and fine-tuning the language. This process ensures that our writing is clear, effective, and ready to be shared with others. So, speech tends to be less explicit than writing. The reason for this is what we are speaking. We often also depend on other methods of getting our message across. We communicate with our gaze, our gestures, our facial expressions, and the tone of our voice. When we are writing, we do not have these tools at our disposal, and so we often need to depend more on the words themselves to express our meaning. Speech is often less explicit than writing because when we speak, we use nonverbal cues like eye contact, gestures, facial expressions, and tone of voice to help convey meaning. These extra forms of communication can make our message clearer even if we don't use as many words. In contrast, writing doesn't allow for these nonverbal cues. So writers must rely more on words to express their ideas and make their meaning clear. Speech also usually takes place in some kind of physical context which participants share, and often the meaning of what we say is dependent on this context. We can use words like this and that, and here and there, and expect that the people we are speaking to can understand what we are talking about based on the physical environment in which the conversation takes place. So it occurs in a shared physical context. These words rely on the physical environment to give the meaning, something that works well in spoken communication but may not be as clear in writing, where the context isn't always shared. So people engage in telephone conversations, for example, like reader and writers are situated in different places and cannot rely on physical cues like gestures and facial expressions to convey meaning, although their conversations are still interactive. So, communication from different locations and lack visual cues such as body language, facial expressions, and gestures. They can still interact and convey meaning through verbal communication alone. The conversation relies on tone of voice, word choice, and context to convey emotions and intentions. This is similar to how written communication, like books or messages, relies on written words and punctuation to convey meaning without the help of nonverbal cues. So, making sense of conversations. In this strand, we will deal with a specific problem that people encounter when they engage in conversation. So the problem is that quite often in conversation people do not mean that they say, and people do not say what they mean. In the first section of this book, we give the example of someone asking to borrow a pen with the words, "Do you have a pen?" and pointed out that, strictly speaking, this utterance is really a question about whether or not someone possesses a pen rather than a request to borrow. Similarly, in the comic strip, when Calvin's mother says, "What are you doing to the coffee table?" she is not so much asking a question as she is expressing shock and disapproval, offering a rebuke. The humor of Calvin's response lies in the fact that he has taken her utterance to be a question rather than a rebuke. Interestingly, we regard Calvin, who operates on the principle that people should mean what they say, as the uncooperative party in this conversation rather than his mother, who strictly speaking does not say what she means. So in the comic strip, Calvin's mother says, Where are you doing to the coffee table?" But she isn't actually asking a question. Instead, she is expressing surprise and disapproval about Calvin's action, offering a rebuke. The rumor comes from Calvin's responses. Here, he interprets her word literally as a question rather than understanding them as a reprimand. Calvin, who believes that people should always mean exactly what they say, responds as if he is simply answering a question, showing his lack of understanding of the implied criticism. This makes Calvin appear cooperative even though his mother is technically the one who doesn't say exactly what she means. The humor relies on this misunderstanding of intent, where Calvin's literal approach to language contrasts with his mother's indirect communication. Although, as we have seen, there is also a certain amount of ambiguity in written language, This problem is much more common in spoken language due in part of its inexplicit context-specific nature. Ambiguity is present in both written and spoken language, but it is more common in spoken language because it is often unclear and depends heavily on context. In conversations, we need to quickly interpret what others mean to keep the discussion flowing, which increases the likelihood of understanding. So this problem is exacerbated by the fact that we have to make decisions about what we think people mean rather quickly in conversations in order for the conversations to proceed smoothly, which increases the chances of misunderstanding. So in pragmatics based on philosophy views the issue of ambiguity as a logical problem. It focuses on determining the conditions needed for someone in a conversation to logically interpret the meaning or force of an utterance. So because these two analytical frameworks come out of such different intellectual traditions, they approach the problem we discussed above in two very different ways. With its root in philosophy, pragmatics tends to approach the problem as a matter of logic, asking what conditions need to be present for a participant in a conversation to logically include that a given utterance has a certain meaning or pragmatic force. So this passage is discussing two different approaches to studying conversation. So and each approach provides a unique insights into how conversations work. The following sections will introduce additional perspectives, we each focusing on a different aspect of spoken interaction. By considering all of these perspectives together, we can gain a thorough and complete understanding of what happens during conversations and how people handle the specific challenges that come with spoken communication. The passage also hints at how these principles apply to interactive written communication, such as in some forms of online or computer mediated exchanges. So with its roots in sociology, a conversation analysis approaches the problem not as one of abstract logic but as one of locally contingent action. According to this perspective, people make sense of what other people say, not by figuring it out logically but by paying attention to the local conditions of the conversation itself, especially the sequence of utterances.
Hello everyone, we are going to talk about strategic interaction. In the last section, we talked about how utterance in conversations are used to perform certain kinds of actions like greeting, requesting, inviting, warning, and apologizing. But usually, these actions taken alone do not constitute conversations. Conversations happen when multiple actions are put together to form activities. We chat, we debate, we flirt, we counsel, we gossip, we commiserate, and we do many other things in our conversations. At the same time, we use conversations to show that we are certain kinds of people and to establish and maintain certain kind of relationship with the people with whom we are talking. We do not, however, engage in these activities and construct these identities and relationships all by ourselves. We must always negotiate what we are doing and how we are being with people with whom we are interacting. We call these methods we use to engage in these negotiations conversational strategies. In this strand, we will focus on two kinds of conversational strategies, face strategies and framing strategies. Face strategies have to do primarily with showing who we are and what kind of relationship we have with the people with whom we are talking. Framing strategies have more to do with showing what we are doing in the conversation, whether we are, no, for example, arguing, teasing, flirting, or gossiping. As we shall see, however, face strategies also contribute to the management of conversational strategies, especially those involving face-threatening acts. In framing strategies, often central to the discursive construction of identity. These two concepts for analyzing how we manage conversations come from an approach to discourse known as interactional sociolinguistics, which is concerned with the sometimes very subtle ways people signal and interpret what they think they are doing and who they think they are being in social interaction. It is grounded primarily in the work of an anthropologist, John Gompers. So, John Gompers, who drew on insight from anthropology and linguistics, as well as the fields of pragmatics and conversation analysis that we discussed in the previous section. One of the most important insight Gompers had was the people belonging to different groups have different ways of signaling and interpreting cues about conversational identity and conversational activities. And this can sometimes result in misunderstandings and even conflict. Not surprisingly, interactional sociolinguistics has been used widely in studies on intercultural communication, including some of the early studies by Gompers himself of communication between Anglo-British and people of South Asian origin in UK. Social identity is a complex topic and one that we will return to later on this book. For now, we will focus on the one fundamental aspect of identity, the fact that our identities are always constructed in relation to the people with whom we are interacting. Some people are our friends and others are complete strangers. Some people are our superiors and others are our subordinates. When we talk, along with conveying information about the topic about which we are talking, we are always conveying information about how close or distant from the people with whom we are talking. We think we are along with information about whether we are social equals or whether one has more power than the other. The strategies we use to do this are called face strategies. The concept of face in its more everyday sense will be familiar to many readers, in terms of often used to denote a person's honor or reputation. Many cultures have the notions of giving people faces and losing face. The definition of face we will be using here, while not far from the more everyday meaning, is based primarily on the work of Goffman and other social scientists. We define face as the negotiated public image mutually granted to each other by participants in a communicative event. There are three important aspects to this definition. The first is that one's face is one's public image, rather than one's true self. This means that the social image that constitutes face is not the same in every interaction in which we engage. We wear different faces for different people. The second important aspect of this definition is that this image is negotiated. That is to say, it is always the result of a kind of give and take with the person or people with whom we are interacting. And throughout a given interaction, the image that we present and the images others project to us undergo multiple adjustments. Finally, in this image is mutually granted, in other words, successfully presenting a certain face in interaction. So, it depends on people with whom we are interacting, cooperating with us. There are basically two broad kinds of strategies we use to negotiate our identities and relationship in interaction. The first we will call involvement strategies. They are strategies we use to establish or maintain closeness with the people with whom we are interacting, to show them that we consider them our friends. This includes things like calling people by their first names or using nicknames, using informal language, showing interest in someone by, for example, asking personal questions and emphasizing our common experience or point of views. While such strategies can be used to show friendliness, as we will see in the next section, they can also be used to assert power over people. Teachers, for example, often use strategies when interacting with young students, and bosses sometimes uses them when interacting with their employees. The second class of phase strategies is known as independent strategies. These are strategies we use to establish or maintain distance from the people with whom we are interacting, either because we are not their friend or more commonly because we wish to show them respect by not imposing on them. They include using more informal language on the terms of address, trying to minimize the imposition, being direct, apologizing, and trying to depersonalize the conversation.
So, what is context? So, context is a crucial factor in the meaning and effect of an utterance on a listener. Different approaches to spoken discourse focus on different aspects of these circumstances, such as pragmatics, conversation analysis, and interactional social linguistics. The idea that the meaning of utterances depends on the context in which they are produced can be traced back to anthropologist Bronislaw Malinowski's 1923 paper entitled The Problem of Meaning in Primitive Languages. Context can encompass various aspects such as the place and time of day, clothing color, political views, and religious beliefs. Scholars like John Firth have proposed models to address this question, such as dividing context into three components: relevant features of participants, relevant objects in the situation, and the last is the effect of verbal action. However, Firth's model does not fully explain how relevance is established, and questions remain about why certain elements are included and excluded from the model. And also, Michael Halliday, a linguist, developed a famous three-part model of context, which consists of the social action, participants' roles and relationships, and the symbolic or rhetorical channel and language's role in the situation. He also introduced the concept of register, which distinguishes spoken and written language. However, Halliday's model faces problems like unclear definitions of the categories, unsure where to fit social identities, and failing to fully address the relevance of contextual features to speakers. So next is context and competence. So Halliday views context as part of a language's meaning potential, focusing on objective potential rather than subjective competence. Delheims, a linguistic anthropologist, emphasized the interaction between language and social life, arguing that mastery of the linguistic system alone is not sufficient for successful communication. Himes developed a model of context which consists of 8 components, each beginning with one of the letters of the word speaking. So, the letter S stand for setting, P for participants, E for ends, A for act sequence, K for key, I for instrumentalities, N for norms of interaction, and the last one, G, is for genera. And these components represent subjective features of competence, the kinds of things speakers need to know to be considered competent communicators by other members of their group. However, Himes' model suffers from the same fundamental problem as those of Halliday and Firth, as it does not represent objective features of context, but rather subjective features of competence. Even when The objective aspects of context remain the same. Expectations about who should say what to whom, when, where, and how will still vary across different communities of speakers. Understanding communicative competence in a speech community requires a different approach to discourse analysis, encompassing ethnography. Ethnography is a research method in anthropology that focuses on the life experiences of people in specific social groups, observing their language use and behavior. It involves spending time with individuals, observing their language usage, and discussing the meanings they assign to different utterances and behaviors. Ethnographic fieldwork is increasingly used in various discourse analysis approaches, including genre analyst, critical discourse analyst, and cross-cultural pragmatics.
Mediated discourse analysis. Mediated discourse analysis is a way of studying how communication in various forms, spoken words, written text, or visual elements is part of everyday actions and how it influences social behaviors and rules. Unlike traditional methods, which focus on analyzing specific text or conversation chosen by the researcher, mediated discourse analysis starts by asking a broad questions: what's happening in this situation? It then looks at all communication and interaction involved in that activity. For example, the text uses the activities of having coffee at Starbucks to show how communication is everywhere and contributes to different aspects of the experience. It includes obvious things like conversation between customer and employees, the menu or advertisement, as well as the least visible elements like employee training manuals, or how the coffee beans were ordered. Each person's role, whether they are a customer, an employee, or a health inspector, shapes how they interact with and understand these forms of communications. This approach highlights how communication is not just about exchanging information, it also plays a role in defining social rules like customer or workers, and practices like ordering coffee or ensuring cleanliness. Mediated discourse analysis is a way of studying how communication discourse help people perform action in real world. Instead of starting with language itself, mediated discourse analysis focuses on the action people are trying to accomplish and then looks at how language and other tools like objects or technology help make those actions happen. For example, while other method might look at how language allows someone to request a coffee, mediated discourse analysis would look at how the action of ordering coffee is influenced by language, as well as other factors like the coffee shop's environment or the menu. Mediated discourse analysis also examines how repeated small actions like ordering a coffee or streaming milk come together over time to form larger social practices, like having a cup of coffee or making a cappuccino. These practices are shaped and supported by language and other forms of communication, which help define people's roles such as being a customer or a barista. Mediated discourse analysis is more interested in how discourse contributes to maintaining these social practices and influencing how people act and see themselves in the roles, rather than simply looking at how language reflects ideas or belief.
And the last topic that we are going to discuss is corpus assisted discourse analysis. So, corpus assisted discourse analysis represents a shift in how language is studied, moving from a narrow focus on individual text to a broader examination of large data sets. So this method not only aids in identifying patterns and trends in language use but also enhances the objectivity of analysis by allowing researchers to test hypotheses against a wider array of examples. A corpus serves as a valuable resource, enabling researchers to explore variations in language across different contexts and genres. So this approach has significant implications for understanding regional differences in English as well as practical applications in areas like forensic linguistics. So the next is corpus-assisted discourse analysis is unique in that it allows us to go beyond looking at a small number of text or interactions to analyzing a large number of them and being able to compare them to other text and conversations that are produced under similar or different circumstances. A corpus is basically a collection of text in digital format that is possible to search through and manipulate using a computer program. So there are a number of large corpora such as the British National Corpus, which is a very general collection of written and spoken text in English. So the above subtopics is the evolution of discourse analysis, contrasting traditional approaches that typically focus on a small number of text or interactions with corpus-assisted discourse analysis, which examines large collections of text known as corpora. Traditional discourse analysis aims to uncover the structure of texts, the construction of participants, writers, speakers, and readers, and listeners. So the ideological agendas they promote and the social actions they facilitate. In contrast, corpus-assisted discourse analysis allows researchers to analyze extensive datasets, enabling comparisons across various contexts and enhancing objectivity by testing theories on broader data. A corpus is a digital collection of text that can be systematically searched and analyzed, encompassing general corpora like the British National Corpus and specialized corpora focused on specific genres or registers. So this method expands the scope of analysis, facilitating a deeper understanding of language use across different contexts and genres. So the corpora are used by linguists to analyze grammatical and lexical patterns in specific language varieties or texts. So they provide insights into differences between English varieties and registers. Corpora also play a crucial role in forensic linguistics, helping to answer questions about authorship in writing. So corpora, which are large collection of digital text, so it serves as invaluable resources for linguists seeking to unravel the intricacies of language. So by analyzing these vast data sets, linguists can identify grammatical and lexical patterns that characterize specific language varieties or text types. So this allows them to pinpoint differences between dialects such as British English and American English, or to distinguish between registers like academic writing and casual conversation. So the insights gleaned from corpora extend beyond mere linguistic analysis, proving crucial in fields like forensic linguistics by comparing a suspect writing to a corpus of known text from that individual. Forensic linguists can contribute to criminal investigations by providing evidence about authorship. So in essence, corpora empower linguists to explore language in a comprehensive and systematic manner, yielding a deeper understanding of its nuances and application across various domains. So next is we have the computer-assisted analysis of corpora. It can still be a very valuable tool for discourse analysis. The key word in this phrase is assisted. So the computer analysis of corpora cannot be used by itself. To do discourse analysis, but it can assist us in doing discourse analysis in some very valuable ways. First, it can help us to see the data that we are analyzing from a new perspective. Second, it can help us to see if we can generalize our theories or observations about certain kinds of text or certain kinds of interactions. And finally, and most importantly, the analysis of corpora can help us to detect what we have been calling discourses with a capital D. Systems of language used that promote particular kinds of ideologies and power relationships. And in the study of Baker and McHenry 2005 on the portrayal of refugees and asylum seekers in public discourse, an excerpt of which is reprinted in section D10, is a good example of how corpus-assisted analysis can help to uncover patterns of language use that point to the existence of different discourses associated with a particular issue. Other examples include Hard Mautner's 1995 study of British newspapers' editorials on the European Union, Ray's 2001 study of gender and language in the popular US, television series Star Trek, and Baker's 2005 study of various discourses surrounding male homosexual in Britain and America. So the last is theory or method. So one of the differences between corpus-assisted discourse analysis and the other approaches to discourse we have presented in this book is that while approaches like genre analysis, conversation analysis, and the ethnography of communication each explicitly advance a particular theory of discourse, corpus-assisted discourse analysis often seen to be theory neutral, that is, it is viewed more as a method for assisting in the application of different theories. Thus, one can use corpora in doing genre analysis, conversation analysis, pragmatics, or critical discourse analysis. And that's all our report. And thank you.